my name is Alyce Benson, and I am a licensed clinical social worker at the Chattanooga Autism Center. And Meghan Lindsay, who is a behavior analyst that works at the Chattanooga Autism Center as well. Both of us will be providing a training today on understanding and supporting children on the autism spectrum. Currently, the incident rates for autism are 1 in 50 or 2% of children. The number of those identified with autism has tripled in the last 13 years. People with autism experience common difficulties to some degree. These difficulties are adaptation to change, fear, nervousness, a lack of environmental awareness, and a lack of emotional recognition. There are also lots of advantages to having autism. There is the ability to hyper-focus on things, especially when it's something of interest to the person. They often have a view or perspective that are different from others. There's the ability to pay attention to details that others don't notice. And they tend to also be very blunt and to the point, will say what they mean. And they don't let emotions interfere with decision making. Not every child with autism has language delays or had a language delay prior to age 3, but the majority of children and adults with autism have auditory processing delays and social communication difficulties. You can notice this when you ask a question and it takes a few seconds for someone to respond to you because they're processing what you said and trying to put the words together to answer your question. People with autism do best when information is presented visually, such as with pictures or in writing. Someone with autism won't notice things like a look that a parent might give to a child when they want them to stop what they're doing. So they may misinterpret or completely miss your body language. And they will misinterpret others. So they can't read the environment and other cues to know what is the appropriate behavior for the current situation. So for example, coming into a church when people are sitting quietly, they may come in and move around and talk loudly, not paying attention to what other people are doing and responding accordingly. Give time for people with autism to respond to questions. That way they can process the information. You also want to check in with them to ensure they understand any instructions given. You can do this by asking them to give you the instructions back. And keep in mind that most people with autism judge your emotions to be more negative than you intend. They may take one thing said, like if you're giving feedback or correcting their work or actions, they may take that as criticism or that you don't like them. So definitely pay attention to your tone and nonverbal communication. A child with autism may interpret things literally. So think about Amelia Bedelia. Things like 1 second means 1 second. Sayings like it's a piece of cake or it's time to hit the books. I had one individual who we were talking about being more flexible to things, and he started showing me how flexible he was by touching his toes. So say what you really mean and be careful. Be literal with time. If you are going to do something in a few minutes, that is too vague for an individual. So don't use things like we're going to do that later or we're going to do that in a little while. You might want to say we're going to do that in 5 minutes or we're going to do that after we finish this activity. Be sure that you follow through with any promises made because they're going to hold you to this. And they may have increased anxiety if things aren't happening when promised. Remember, do not rely on nonverbal communication because they're not going to pick up on that. Make sure that you give concise and exact answers whenever possible. Special interest. A child with autism will have a special interest and it's something that they enjoy talking about, that they enjoy researching, that they enjoy, for younger kids, that they enjoy playing with. Things like Thomas the Train, Legos, video games, military history for older children. These special interests will be intense. Special interests can change quickly and without notice. For girls, special interests tend to be more mainstream to things like TV shows and music. Special interests can be fun. You want to use these to build rapport with an individual. Ask them questions about what they're interested in, and they will be more than happy to talk with you about it, usually in great detail. Incorporate special interests into what you're doing as much as possible. You can use special interests as rewards or a way to motivate or engage them in activities. So things like, first, let's do this activity, and then you can draw pictures of airplanes. Allow the child a specific amount of time to talk about the interest, or they will want to talk about it the entire time. So you may also limit that and say, we're going to talk about dinosaurs for 5 minutes.
Sometimes children in new situations can be very nervous and anxious. These things happen because the child is not used to the situation, and sometimes, like Alyce was saying, they have trouble picking up on the cues around them that help them understand what they should be doing and how they should be acting. Sometimes kids won't do this, sometimes they do. Sometimes also kids don't have outward signs. So if a child is saying they have a stomach ache and they've just moved into something that a parent told you could be a more difficult situation, you might need to pick up on those cues. Sometimes a child with autism might not be able to sit still. So try to be creative and think of something else that they can do instead. You might have them stand to do the activity. You might have them sit on a exercise ball. Sometimes just moving around can help get out some of that nervous energy and help them to focus more effectively. Also, sometimes transitions can be difficult, so make sure you warn the individual before something new is going to happen. If you're going to stop a really fun activity in 5 minutes, let them know that that's going to happen so that they can prepare, and let them know what is going to be happening after the 5 minutes ends. So we're going to stop the really fun coloring activity, and we are going to go use the restroom. Sometimes problem behaviors can happen because of things that we can't see. So smelling things that are weird, noises, lights, all of these can cause a problem for someone with autism. And minimizing these can help the child or individual be more comfortable. During a transition, sometimes it's also helpful to give the child something to do. So if you're all walking down the hall together as a group to go to the bathroom, maybe have the child with autism that's having difficulty hold the clipboard for you, or hold your hand, or just sort of sit and talk with them while you're walking down the hall so that they are distracted. One thing not to do that is sort of an interesting autism quality is sometimes kids with autism can be very literal rule followers. So try not to have that child be the rule police and be the enforcer of the rule for other people. That'll backfire against you. Sometimes children with autism have sensory issues. So if you are asking a child to paint with their fingers and they're really having an issue with that and it seems very aversive, they may actually just have an issue with the texture of the paint or with the way that it feels on the paper. So be sure to be aware of that and to pick up on those things. Sometimes even the humming of an air conditioner vent or a light or something can be an issue. So try to use your brain and think around you what might be upsetting or causing an issue. Smells also are an issue. Try to limit the smelly perfume or lotions. There are things like that that you wear when you're working with someone with autism. Also, try to eliminate some other things in the environment if you can. Understand that sometimes an individual may need to step away from an activity. So try to always schedule some downtime. If they are getting really amped up, even about something that they're excited about, you might need to step away and have them take a few deep breaths so that that doesn't escalate into something further. Working with someone with autism, you want to talk to them. You want to comfort them if they're upset. And actually, we suggest that you do the exact opposite usually. Sometimes, especially with those sensory issues, if someone's really having an issue, it may be best to step out into the hall and keep your eye on that individual, but just sort of keep talking to a minimum and try not to hug them and comfort them, because that might actually make the situation worse. Sometimes if you're able to just let them cool down on their own, the situation will de-escalate more quickly. Some support strategies that you can use include having defined spaces. So this is going to be a workspace. If you're getting overwhelmed and you need to step away from the group, this is where you can go to make that happen. Have things that the child can interact with. Sometimes we call those fidgets, something they can do with their hands. Again, that just helps them release some of that internal energy that can be making them nervous. You can use a weighted blanket or a weighted vest if you have that available. Sometimes, we talked about that sometimes individuals with autism don't like to be touched. If a parent or someone close to that child tells you that indeed they like to be squeezed when they're feeling overwhelmed, then honor that. Noise-canceling headphones, sometimes chewing on something like gum, just focusing on doing something can really help. And always make sure that you are asking parents or a supervisor before you are implementing any sort of strategy to make sure that you're trained in the strategy and that it's okay to implement that with the child. Sometimes kids with autism don't work well in groups. Sometimes this isn't because they don't want to, but because they just have difficulty with that peer interaction. Sometimes they just do better interacting with an adult because an adult has the ability to interpret what they're saying or what they want. And sometimes kids are a little less patient. So honor that and know that just because a kid is playing by themselves doesn't mean they're unhappy. It's okay to have a peer buddy or something go over and invite that child to come be part of the group, but also sometimes they just want to play alone and that's okay too. Another thing that really helps is sort of creating a structure and a rule system. And the nice thing about this is that you can do it for the whole group that you're working with. You don't have to implement rules just for the individual with autism. You can make it a group-wide structure. So make sure to give rules in a concise way, give instructions so that everyone can understand. That way you're not singling out the individual with autism. It's just sort of, this is what we're doing, and this is how we're going to do it. This is supposed to be fun. So try to eliminate things when you can, avoid different problems that you know that the child is going to have an issue with, help them feel secure. Again, really set the expectations for what you're going to be doing. So if you're going to be with the child for an hour and you're going to color and then use the restroom and then go outside and then do painting, sometimes just visually writing down what you're going to do and having the child check that off can be really helpful. It helps them feel more in control of the situation and like they know what's going to happen next. It makes transitions a little more easily. The last thing, if you are in a situation where you are starting to feel overwhelmed or like you're not sure what to do with an individual with autism, it's always okay to get help. Parents are always the first line of communication, so when they drop off, ask about things that might be an issue or things that they really like too. What can I do to help them in a situation when they are feeling overwhelmed? Or ask a supervisor. Overall, the experience is supposed to be positive, not only for the individual with autism, but for everyone involved. So try to be proactive and creative to make that happen so that everyone can have a good time. For more information about autism, you can call our office at 423-531-6961 or visit our website for more information about resources and support in the community at ChattanoogaAutismCenter.org. Thank you.